What's up, everybody? Unrested here. Look at my big fat nose because I'm using fisheye lens. What do you guys think? This is pretty cool, huh? I just got this lens and I realized when I got it that it made me think back to the Beastie Boys video called Sabotage, where the entire trick of the whole video is just that they did the entire thing in a fisheye lens, like many old school rap videos. And I remember thinking like what a cool video that was and everything, and then realized I had just bought this 400 yen lens and done the same thing. 400 yen's about $4, so it's just like technology's come so far and things have become so cheap for what we thought was an expensive piece of technology that I'm doing the Beastie Boys Sabotage video pretty much, aside from the fact that I can't rap, with about 400 yen. Awesome. What a great budget. I'm just messing with this today. I'm just kind of testing it out. It's my first chance to get to use it. If the imagery annoys you in fisheye view, please just listen to the audio. This is a JFAQ. You don't need to look at my big stupid face, okay? But I am going to keep putting it in front of the camera like this because that's what a fisheye lens is for. You're supposed to keep being like, oh yeah, and then you put your hands up and you're like, yeah, my hands are so fucking big, dude. Anyway, sorry. Today's JFAQ is about being bitter in Japan. Why are some people bitter in Japan? This is something I've seen before on a couple other JVlog channels. Not many. For the most part, I would say 90% of JVlogger channels are pretty positive. And even those channels where the people just come to visit Japan for a little bit, you know, Smosh's come to Japan, PewDiePie's come to Japan, I guess that's very easy for them to have a honeymoon period for the very short time that they're in Japan, so maybe they shouldn't count. But nonetheless, they do seem to enjoy Japan for the short time they are here. I have met people who have visited Japan just only once and hated it, apparently, and I have no confirmation to back this fact up, but I have heard, I actually heard from a friend who works in catering. She caters for a lot of people who are Hollywood movie stars that come to Japan and Tokyo. And according to her, Johnny Depp hates coming to Japan, that he will, apparently when he has to make an appearance in Japan, he will come and leave the same day, that he does not even stay the night in Japan, that apparently he hates how crowded it is, which I can kind of understand that. There's some places I go, like when I try to shop at Costco, god damn, it's crowded. There's one thing that Japan can't really handle very well, and that's if there's like a supersized version of something. Costco has like normal size, or even I guess you could say supersize grocery carts, and most of our stores here in Japan have very skinny, slim ones, very, very small compared to the American ones, and they're very good at driving those. But when it comes to these giant, like Humvee size shopping carts, they just like, they don't understand that like if you lean to the side and move your cart out, and look at something, you've just blocked off the entire aisle. Or Japanese people go really crazy for like free samples, so they'll just all stop with all their carts around a free sample, and then you're just like stuck, so you have to start shouting like "Sumimasen, sumimasen," and get your way through. So I can understand where crowds can sometimes be annoying in Japan. There's those situations. But people becoming bitter in Japan. Why do people become bitter in Japan? Well, first off, let me just say that usually if you see someone who becomes bitter, and they're seemingly perpetually bitter, that type of person is usually bitter no matter what the situation is. I don't think it's Japan that's making them bitter. A bitter person is usually a negative person, and a negative person finds all the negativity they can. They are a negativity magnet. They soak up, they suck in, and they magnetically attract anything and everything that is negative about the life around them. It sticks to them, and then that's all they can focus on, and they perpetually complain about it as well. This is their problem, not your problem, not the problem of the place that they're living in. Because, I mean, unless you're living in something like a third world country, whereas Japan is obviously a very, very first world technologically advanced country, you don't really have much to complain about. Life is pretty good here. You're not starving. You're not want for anything. You've got shelter usually. I mean, if you're a J-vlogger complaining, you have a camera and a computer, so I mean, really, come on. But you could say, well, Scott, you know, hierarchy of needs. Of course, everybody has that stuff. That doesn't, you know, invalidate their right to complain about minor things. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. You know, I understand where you're coming from there. So would you say that some of their complaints are valid? I would say there are times that you can find things in Japan that become frustrating. It's really up to you how much you let that affect you. But there's also ways to cope with things that you find frustrating. For example, I guess one minor thing, like I said, most of these have to be minor negative things to bitch about in order to actually become very negative and find multiple aspects that you can complain about. And one of those would be like food, for example. A lot of your favorite American foods aren't going to be here. You know, sometimes it's hard to even find simple things like peanut butter. You can find it, but sometimes when you do, it's either too expensive or it's this weird peanut butter paste that isn't exactly peanut butter. It's kind of like this sugary, drippy, syrupy stuff that it tastes good, but it has no real peanut butter taste or consistency of peanut butter. There's just certain aspects you're gonna have to get over. If there's certain things you can't let go of, then maybe Japan isn't for you. If food is such a big issue, and trust me, there have been people I've known who have gone home over food, then Japan's not for you. Probably a lot of Asian countries aren't for you then, because the food is gonna be very different. You're not gonna be able to get everything you want. One thing I guess a lot of people don't realize is America really is the land of variety. The amount of variety we have everywhere we go in stores is absolutely incredible. And not many countries have that kind of variety. For example, let's take cereal. You walk into the cereal aisle in an American grocery store and just acres of cereals. All different types, healthy, sugary, kids cereals, ones with toys in the box, the little mini cereals, oatmeal. In Japan, you usually have two cereals. You have Frosted Flakes and you have Cocoa Flakes. I have just listed almost every cereal that Japan has. I mean, mind you, once in a while you find like, you know, granola cereal. Maybe they get a little bit crazy and they're like, here's something that's kind of like Pops. But for the most part, I've just named every single cereal type there is in Japan. Not a lot of variety, and it goes with that for a lot of American-based foods. Now, of course, when it comes to Japanese foods, there's a ton of variety. Lots of fish, lots of even different types of rice. You go to a rice store and you think, well, there's either white or brown. No, there's different types of rice from all over, different ways that they're grown, different grains of rice, different things like that. And that's just food that I just covered there. I just only covered food. So you can imagine there's many, many different things that people can become bitter about. There's people who become bitter about lack of communication. And there's multiple ways I can explain this. And again, this is kind of more so on the complainer rather than the place that they're living. First of all, if you come here at all and complain that enough people don't speak English, definitely shut the hell up and go back to your own country. Japan and many other Asian nations, yeah, they want to learn English. Yeah, English is important to this country, but it's not needed. It's not super necessary in most businesses here. And it's Japan, so they speak Japanese. And yeah, a lot of European countries can speak English really well, usually because they learn English via immersion. But if you go to those countries, you will have to know their language too in order to get a job, survive, be taken seriously, communicate with multiple people. Not everybody in those countries always speaks English. So coming to a country and complaining that they don't speak your native language, it's just ignorant. It's just ignorant. There's no excuse I can make for that. If that's something you're bitter about, then again, please, you know what? Japan's not for you, and probably travel in general to another country isn't for you. You know, I think most of us, and most of my viewers, are very intelligent, and definitely intelligent enough to not expect people in every country to speak their native language, whatever it may be. Um, so let's just skip on to another one, because it's, I mean, even me saying it to myself, yes, it has been a complaint. I have actually seen JVloggers who complain about this, but it's not a valid complaint. It really isn't, because it's the same for any country. Yes, they speak their native language. If you want to interact, you should learn the country's native language. Moving on from there, what other things can people be bitter or negative about? I guess sometimes people can be bitter or negative about closeness in relationship to making Japanese friends. It's different here than it would be in America. I'd say one of the main different things is that if you set up a date or a time or a day to hang out with a Japanese person, there's some people who are like, yeah, they didn't want to hang out for like 1 month. They didn't have any time for me until 1 month later. And I guess they see this as like an act of rudeness, like kind of like, oh, I guess if I have to hang out with you, I can hang out, I don't know, 4 weeks later. But that's not what people are doing here. People are not trying to make excuses not to hang out with you. If a person does set up a date to hang out with you in Japan, they most likely 100% actually do want to hang out with you. If they didn't, they would probably just say something like, maybe I'm busy or something. They probably won't directly say no, because that tends not to happen in Japan, but they'll probably make up an excuse or something. If they want to hang out with you, they will set a date in their date book or schedule book, and almost every Japanese person's got a schedule book, or at least uses a smartphone to schedule stuff. And there's a reason behind the fact that most of them set stuff up a month later. Spontaneity is not a big thing in Japan. Spontaneity is not really ingrained in Japanese culture the way it is in American culture. Now, I mean, of course, there are certain specific special circumstances in which spontaneity either happens or must happen in order for things to be complete, but I'm talking on a level of hanging out. That's all I'm, disclaimer, here I go again. So in America, usually we can, hang out within the week. We can hang out sometimes by the end of the night with a person. If we meet someone cool that we're talking it up and like, hey, you want to hang out tonight? And it's not seen as crazy. In Japan, that would be out of the question. If you met someone and that very first time you met them, you're like, you should come over tonight. They'd be like, whoa, slow it down. Let me see what my schedule is, and then we'll figure it out. And that's where some people get bitter. They're like, oh, people don't want to hang out with me. They schedule these long dates way ahead of time where I have to try and remember to hang out with them a month later. And, if you want to blame something here in Japan for the reason why that is, it's work. When you are scheduled to work 12-hour days in a country that harshly overworks its people, those people don't actually have time to hang out, because some of them are working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and it's insane. And they're going to put their job first, because that's how Japan works. Loyalty to the company first. Almost to some extent, you would say loyalty to the company first, loyalty to your family second, then friends come third after that. So you should just be glad you got a point on the schedule. And that's usually the reason behind. There might be other certain circumstances. You've got to remember, people here, they're constantly running around to get either themselves a job, or their kids, or their family to a different place. For example, take my situation into account. If someone suddenly asked to hang out with me today, wow, okay, already I can tell you multiple things I have to do. I'm going to start a job in just a little bit as soon as I finish this video. As soon as I finish that video, as soon as I finish my video, I start that job. As soon as I finish that job, I literally run to the train, take the train to pick up my son at Juku, take my son back home from Juku, start dinner. After that, we study with my kid. From there, I have to give them a bath, clean up the house a little bit, clean up from dinner, get my kids ready for bed, read them a story, and then finally, probably around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, I can finally start to think about chilling out for a little bit of time for myself. And usually then's when I find out I still have a little bit more illustration work to do. I start my illustration job. Sometimes I work as late as 3 a.m., guys. There's a reason I'm calling arrested. Lots to do every day. So if that's just my job, and I'm not the kind of person who is worked 12 hours by like a brutal boss,
and that's super busy. I think one thing you've got to think about in Japan is that um, we are on the move to connect with a lot of public transportation, and people don't really take that into account as to how much of that your day that eats up. To walk to the train, to take the train, how much time you're on the train, moving you to the next spot. Almost everybody in Japan takes the train. If they don't, they're living in the countryside and they're probably taking a bus, which is public transportation again. Um, if a person puts you on a schedule to hang out in Japan, they're not trying to brush you off. They're busy. So that's just another example of things I hear people sometimes be bitter about, and it's really not something you should be bitter about at all. It's just literally a part of Japan. Now, again, these things that I'm mentioning, I should post this disclaimer because, again, you'll always get the people who are like, that's not me, I don't do that, I've been here and I don't do that. Okay, so most of this is like beginner stuff to Japan. You like do this within your first 2 years, you hear people bitch about this and then go home. Um, Usually, of course, people who've been here, 13, 15 years, you meet a person like Hiko Simon or Victor, Mexican Samurai 100. If we brought this stuff up, they would just laugh. They'd be like, yeah, of course, everybody knows this. Even me, 9 years, I'm, of course, understanding of this stuff, hence I'm explaining it. I guess, though, every once in a while you do find some guys who, quote unquote, say that they're trapped. That they're trapped. They met a girl here, got married, had kids, and now that girl doesn't want to move back to their home country, or they can only get a job teaching here, or they got married and got a girl pregnant and started a family and then decided that they couldn't get another job because they couldn't speak Japanese. And the only person to blame in that situation is that person who is complaining. A fine example of making an excuse that you can't learn Japanese after you get married is the fact that I've been taking private lessons now for a while, and I find absolutely nothing wrong or no lack of motivation or time to fit in a 1 hour lesson at least. I'm not really sure why people try to make excuses as to why they do not learn the language of the country and then continue to complain about how they only have one job option. If they complain that there's only this job option in Japan, they have put themselves usually in that situation. If you hear people complain about how all they can do is teach English in Japan, they've usually put themselves in that situation. I have met guys who speak zero Japanese, never learned any bit about the language at all, and have started their own company here and are super happy. I met one guy who had started an IT company here that usually did a lot of their stuff abroad. He just made sure that he hired Japanese people who could translate for him. I met multiple people here who've started their own schools, never learned to speak a word of Japanese because if you're in English school, from the second the person walks in the door, if you speak to them in English, it's okay. They're happy about that. They're like, oh, I'm already learning immersion English because as soon as I walk in, they say hello and don't try to greet me in Japanese. And those guys are happy and they're making a decent buck. Using the language as an excuse as to being trapped in Japan and that you can't go anywhere, it's just another example of, taking negativity and just sticking with it and not trying to do anything creatively with your life or looking at divergent pathways that could follow ahead. You can forever stagnate in your stale negativity. That's the easiest path to take. Everybody can do that. Just sit in their, pity pool and just weep about how hard life is, because life is hard. But when life gets hard, you got to get harder, right? I mean, I don't understand how people don't know how to push back. So I guess coming full circle to the beginning of our conversation, why are some people bitter in Japan? Well, they're usually bitter because they're bitter people. Japan does not make people bitter. People make themselves bitter, and usually, almost 100% of the time, those people that do make bitter posts or bitter rants about things that have happened to them in Japan or blame Japan for their problems usually are their own worst enemy. Usually will be bitter or negative in any situation they get put into. As I've said, the easiest path to take is the most simple non-moving, non-progressive path, and that is to just sit there and stagnate in your own weepy, weepy personality. Don't be that person. If you come here, um, right away, grab everything that you can that will help you succeed. Grab onto the language, push past that as hard as you can. As soon as you get here, stay strong on your studying the whole time that you're here. Um, you know, be ready to study a bunch of different things that are relevant about the country. I think one thing I see, and this isn't necessarily the people who watch my channel's problem, I think this is more of an internet problem. The fact that there's a lot of obsolete information on the internet. Be careful with what you're learning about Japan on the internet. There's so much stupid, obsolete information on there. Check on the websites written if the blog was written a long time ago. If it's written like in the 90s, late 90s, probably most of the stuff's irrelevant at this point. That was one thing that kind of happened with me was, sometimes you can't check the date on some of these blogs and vlogs and videos and stuff. And stuff that I did read was totally outdated. It wasn't true anymore. Just check your sources and everything. One of the good things that you can do, and we appreciate this as J-vloggers, is if you do check something and you're like, I'm not totally 100% sure this is true, let me ask somebody who lives there, and then you say what you've researched, tell us, and ask us our opinion. We really like that. What we don't like is where you do zero research and just say, hey, tell this to me, let me know this. How do I get a job in Japan? I've done zero research. What college should I go to in Japan? I've done zero research. Is this really good? And, how do I have good manners eating in Japan? I've done zero research. Come on, do a little bit of research. Like if you ask something like, I read somewhere that it's rude to mix the wasabi into the soy sauce when eating sushi and picking up the sushi and dipping it in with your fingers. Is that true? In which case I could tell you that probably if you're in a very, very fine sushi restaurant, one of those very expensive ones where you don't see the prices on the walls next to the sushi, you probably don't want to do that with your hands. You want to pick it up with the chopsticks and everything. But if you're like in an izakaya or something like that, screw it. Just do it. No one cares. I've seen Japanese people do it all the time. That's who I learned it from, mixing the wasabi with the soy sauce. Anyway, guys, that's just a little bit about why do people become bitter in Japan, and does Japan make people bitter? I'm Unrested. This has been JFAQ. Until next time, have a good one.